Hello, everyone. My name is Gitika Gorthy, and today I'm very, very honored and excited to be featuring a very special space champion, Rae Hill. Amy is a space artist and ceramic painter whose work depicts dramatic celestial scenes on pottery. After graduating with a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Art from Western Washington University, Amy combined her love for science fiction and space exploration with her current job at a pottery painting studio to develop her current craft. She hopes that while drinking from a Mars rover mug or a nebula teapot, we can all contemplate the unknown and encourage ourselves to face change bravely. Art is critical in every aspect of our life, especially with the innovation and creativity that the aerospace industry has. I'm incredibly inspired and in awe of all of the artwork that Amy has on her website. So I'm incredibly excited to hear about her journey in space art and how she discovered this unique avenue. So welcome. Thank you so much for taking your time to inspire the next generation.
Yeah, thank you, Gitika. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, before we get into understanding, what intrigued your interest for space, could you start off by telling us maybe about a typical day? I know usually there isn't a typical day, but how does your day usually run?
Yeah, it definitely varies, based on whether I'm in the midst of a huge round of commissions or not. Right now, I'm kind of in that in-between stage, but normally if it's, in the middle of a commission round, I like to get up and do a little run before I start anything. And then after that, I typically try to plan like one social media post a day in the morning and get that kind of out of the way to maintain marketing and interest in talking to people about fun science art. um, and then after that, I make a plan for what projects I'm going to work on. So definitely, people might think that my job is just all painting, but it is not. So a lot of times, if I can get like maybe two projects done a day, that's like a very
Wow.
productive, successful day because they typically take about 3 hours each, give or take a little bit. Sometimes one might take several days. Sometimes I could get a few done and at sort of the same time if they're kind of the same thing. But then other times I might be photographing or editing pictures of my work, which can take a lot of time too. And then there's also the admin end of things, which is just consulting customers about their project. Usually that's kind of done in the earlier stages. So I'll spend a few days early on just strictly talking to people about what they want, making sure to ask all the relevant questions so I don't, misinterpret anything. But I would say that 3 days a week, I get a lot of solid painting done. And then I also teach extracurricular art classes for kids and teens online since the pandemic. So that hasn't even gone back to in person yet, but I do that twice a week. So on those days, it's a little less painting and maybe a little bit more kind of admin side of things. But that's a typical week for me.
Wow, you keep so much on your plate. And it's really nice to know that you're not just always painting, but there's a lot of other parts to your day. And especially, I have to talk about the social media. I mean, I follow your Twitter and I absolutely love the posts you make. And that's how I found out about your incredible artwork. And I know social media and being like a space communicator or like a communicator in general on social media is really big. And I'm curious, what got you into being very active on social media? And has that changed maybe your perspective or how you think social media is important to the world, the growing world?
Yeah, it definitely has. Like I see it as a super double-edged sword. You can really
Yeah.
like go down the wrong path of social media and it can like take over your life and you can get in the wrong circles, but it can also be a really, really helpful tool to connect with people you would have never met like in normal circumstances. There's so many people like, you and me sitting here now wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Twitter. And lots of inspirational scientists I've met through Twitter. All pretty much all of my customers are from Twitter and then Instagram, and I think those are my two main ones. But that really being able to kind of open your business up to the world virtually like that, and not have like any like red tape to get through, I guess, and just like being right out there really helps with my business in general, and being able to sell during a time like the pandemic when we couldn't actually get out there and see people face to face. But going back to like how I kind of got into Twitter and social media was way back when I was playing this game called Lifeline, which is a little space text adventure. And there was like a little Twitter community happening in like 2016. This was like years ago. But we were like very active on there. And so that's when I first actually started really getting active on Twitter. And
Oh,
that's when I started making space art on pottery because it was inspired by that game. And so it kind of got some interest on there. And so from that, it kind of took off and brought me into the more like astro side of Twitter. And that's when things just kind of started like getting some momentum and taking off. So it started in a very weird way, but ended up really working out to my benefit.
yeah, and you said some incredible points that I can personally relate with very well, which is first off, the leveraging of social media. It can definitely be a whirlwind of, getting sucked in and getting distracted, but it could also be a great place to network with people from across the world. Everyone that I've interviewed is from Twitter or LinkedIn or some social media platform. So I can relate with you that it's just such a great way to like talk with people with similar interests and meet people. And hearing your journey of how it's helped grow your business is very cool. And one of the questions that I have for you is a lot of young students are interested in starting a business, and you found your niche passion in art and specifically astro art and space art. How were you able to take this idea that you have and make it come like a reality with like a business and getting commissions on your paintings? I'm sure it must have taken a lot of steps and work to get to there, but what was that like moment of, or what was that journey like for you?
Yeah, I would say it's anything but fast. Like it was very slow to get there. And I kind of think that that is definitely the way to go because you don't want to burn out super fast. Um, so, I mean, it works for some people, but for me, I had to start off, like I said, with just like a few pieces of space art here and there that I was doing with this like fan community. We were all excited about this story about this little astronaut on the moon. And so I was just making little things that I liked. And I had still been mostly, at that point, I was working at the Paint Your Own Pottery Studio, which I'm no longer there, but that was my main source of income. And so that I was just kind of doing for fun. And then that was continuing for the next few years. And then I kind of worked a couple other odd jobs, got my teaching job here. But then things really took a shift when we had the big shutdown for COVID because I was teaching at the local elementary school, kind of doing like the art on the cart teacher job, and then doing pottery in my spare time and doing my Etsy updates once a month as a little extra income. But that quickly like went away when
Yeah.
the pandemic hit. So yeah, little did I know I would never be coming back to that school. So I quickly had
Oh,
to figure out like a contingency plan for this and
yeah.
try and figure out like how to make money again. So I shifted my business from just monthly restocks into commissions because I got lucky as well. At the same time, I had a tweet kind of go a little bit viral of a nebula teapot, and all of a sudden I had so much demand for not as much that I could offer. So I constantly had orders that I could fulfill. And that's when things kind of shifted from this being a side hobby to more full time work. And so I guess it would be like partially, a little bit of luck, a little bit of like bad circumstance, but taking advantage of what I had at the moment. And so it's a hard formula to like follow, but I guess I would just tell people, like try to think outside the box, look for opportunities that'll work for you in the moment, react to like here and now and not always try and plan as far ahead and just be flexible, I guess.
Yeah, you definitely don't know what's coming at you at any time and
Yeah.
just being ready to adapt to those changes. I'm so glad that, that teapot did blow up, and I'm not surprised why it did. Like all your artwork on your website has like a different theme, a different concept to it. And I'm curious to learn about, how you come about these designs and these ideas. Of course, you cater to your customers, but also there's a lot of creativity that comes from you and you add your own personal touch to it. And so as someone who's not as necessarily artistic, it's very difficult for me to come up with a design or come up with an idea. And so I'm curious how that like process goes for you. I know some things might come easier to others, but I'm curious to hear, how does that artwork design process go for you?
Yeah, it's kind of just start. It depends on, if it is for me or if it's for a customer. So yeah, that is a bit of a different process. Like if it's for myself, it's maybe a little more organic, where I might just start by browsing like the Hubble site and look it through the gallery and see if I'm looking for a certain color of nebula and try and find something that fits that. And I always try to add something of my own to what I'm using as a reference. I never want to really just straight up, copy what I'm seeing, because I know that that's pretty much someone else's art too that they've created through astrophotography and things like that. So I always try to take it and twist it and turn it into something new. And then, it can be different depending on what kind of imagery I'm going for. Sometimes I feel like I just want to do something abstract and go with like a nebula or a galaxy and just have the colors do the talking for me. Other times I like to draw little astronauts and figurative work and kind of try to express, some sort of like emotion through their actions in relation to each other. And that requires a little more preparation in terms of like drawing things out. So I'll be sketching on paper first and using some reference images of figures online or my little like mannequin that I have and can pose. And then once I have a sketch, I actually have an example right here. This is kind of an exclusive because I haven't posted this on on the internet yet.
I'm excited.
But yeah, so I had my little sketch of my little astronauts that I made, and I scanned it and I resized it because it was originally like this size. And so then I made it a little bit smaller. And then I took that and I traced it with like carbon paper. You can just trace through it and put it on a teapot like this. And then I had my lines in kind of carbon transfer, and then I can paint over it. And I made my little astronaut scene.
Wow. Oh my
After,
gosh, that's amazing. That's so cool. I have to say, I like just from that sketch to on there, that sounds like a very difficult process.
It's definitely the most time consuming when I do the figurative stuff, and probably the most risky because sometimes it's harder to like fix things and tweak things when you're doing like that kind of detailed line work. It's like a lot of layering the glazes in a certain way, and then you're scraping away different layers to reveal the colors underneath. So it requires a lot of planning because you can't always go back and re-add what you did underneath later. So there's a lot of high stakes in it. And then it's also the fact of like putting that into the kiln and wondering what it's going to look like, because there's a lot of colors here that look very opaque right now, but they could come out very transparent based on just what color they are, and you kind of don't know until it comes out of the kiln. So that's kind of thinking about the whole process though. And that's when I make things for myself. With customers, I definitely try and consult them a lot about, what kind of images they're looking for, or like the vibe they're going for. And then I really love it when they do send me reference photos, because I can kind of get a sense of what they're picturing and then even take it in my own direction from there. And so I'll kind of go about it in a similar way of layering colors the right way, etching things a way that I want to bring back out to the surface of the pottery. And then I'll usually show them a picture before it goes into the kiln to make sure it looks as they want it to look, and kind of explain what will change, what won't change from what I know. And then in the end, it'll come out and then they'll see the finished result. So that's kind of how that process goes.
Yeah, that sounds very difficult, but very exciting. I think for an artist, it's always that uncertainty that makes you excited and makes you want to do more. So I think that's very exciting. And I'm curious how you got into this specific realm. I know you mentioned the Twitter contest really inspired you, but I'm wondering, did you always have some curiosity for space, or was it something kind of that built up over time because you started to realize that space art was something very interesting, something that's important to space exploration, and it's just a form of communication. And I would love to also hear your thoughts on the importance of space art in this rapidly growing industry.
Yeah, I've always been interested in science fiction, I guess. I'm from more of that angle, not like the hard sciences, more like soft sciences, I guess, or like the lighter science fiction. And so, yeah, I love, like, the movie Moon was super inspirational to me. Like I said, the game Lifeline was super, just hit me at the right moment, I guess. It was like during a moment where I was having difficulties with like a family issue, and then this game was just kind of about saving an astronaut on a moon. And so it just kind of like really
hit something,
the right way. And so I also like just having space as a backdrop. Feels like it is such a great opportunity to discuss really any issue that you want to talk about. Like, people ask like, well, when are you going to do something different? I'm like, well, this is just such a great like stage for acting out current events anything you're feeling, because, there's so many possibilities of what could be out there. There's no one to tell you, like, that there's probably lots of people that can tell me this is probably wrong, it doesn't look right. But you know what I mean? Like there's lots of
Yeah.
possibilities with the kind of imagery you could imagine out there in the far reaches of space. So I just think it serves as a really inspiring backdrop for like any kind of message you want to send.
Yeah, that's an incredible point. I haven't thought of it like that, but space is so expansive and it's just we don't know what's out there. We don't know what it means necessarily, and we don't know everything. And I think that's the beauty of it, just like in our real world, in our own houses, schools, workplaces. I think it's just thinking of it like that and having spaces like the background. Well, I've never thought of that, but that is such a great point and a great way to look at it. And you have commissions on your artwork, and I kind of touched on this question a little bit earlier, but how are you able to kind of keep up your customer base and your clientele? Because obviously, I think social media has served as a great platform for you. But are there other strategies or ways you would suggest for other students who or other individuals in business to consider in trying to keep up with the clientele?
Yeah, first of all, just like bless my customers because and all my followers who have waited like years to get a commission sometimes, and try and try and try and try again, because they do fill up quickly. And I have felt a lot of guilt in the past about like I can only offer so much, and there's a lot more people that want something than how many spaces I have available. And yet some people still stick around for a while and try and over and
That's
over again to get
awesome.
something. And so very, very grateful for that. And I think um, I guess just when I'm approaching marketing and social media and trying to like gain trust with my customers, I always stick to the rule that like I want to be the best version of myself with everything that I post. I never want to post something that feels like disingenuous or is just strictly to maybe follow a trend that maybe doesn't fit like my personality. And I
Yeah.
hope my customers kind of see that everything I do is like with lots of pride that I put out there into what I'm making and posting. Um, and so that's kind of my approach to it. And also trying to work on, excuse me, making it the most like visually appealing that I can, working on like my photo editing skills and things like that. And then just kind of being consistent. And it goes back to, again, taking pride in what you post and being consistently posting things that you are really happy with. And if you don't have something that you're super in love with, maybe just don't post it. You don't need to do something
Yeah.
every single day. Sometimes it's good to take a little bit of a break. So just quality over quantity, I think, is the best way to go about it.
Yeah, and also just being yourself and your authentic self. I think that's a really important like lesson for everyone, regardless of what industry they're in, just being true to who you are. And did you have obstacles when in this journey of following this completely new avenue? I know it was a difficulty during the pandemic of transitioning, kind of figuring out what you're going to be doing in your next stages of life. But when you were pursuing this new avenue, did you have difficulties or obstacles? And or maybe even biases, like did you have anyone ever say something about space art? I'm just curious about this, like if you did have any obstacles, and if so, how are you able to overcome them?
That's a good question. Yeah, I wouldn't say I necessarily had obstacles with customers. I feel like my customers have been super fantastic. Like 99% of the time, everyone's really awesome, trusts what I do, and very gracious, and we have great communication with each other. And I think I I really gained a lot of those skills from like working in customer service and retail for many, many years before this. And just kind of like having a lot of empathy for like their end of things too. I worked in a call center for like 6 months, so it it was a great like boot camp for like
Yeah,
understanding human nature and people and things like that. These
I
customers, oh, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say I bet because I've seen like clips of things and it's like crazy what like call centers have to go through. So
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, my customers are nowhere near as angry as any of those people I've ever talked to in a call center. So it's much like happier conversations. But I think just that like understanding human nature aspect of it and getting outside of your field for a little bit is also good. Um, understand how to work with people. But then I would say the other part that maybe was challenging was more of like technical side of like accounting and things like that, stuff I hadn't had experience with before. I finally got myself an accountant and have that kind of figured out on that end. So that was the most challenging thing. It's just learning a little bit as I go, learning how to best like ship things, package things, because the last thing you want to do is have to like remake something if it breaks in the mail, because sometimes things get just thrown around all over the place. So yeah, those little aspects, just you kind of learn little bits as you go. But I would say that things have been just really great with all of my customers. I couldn't be happier with like everyone I've worked with. It's also been really nice to like gain a little insight into like their world, and sharing really personal like emotional experiences they've had to like make me understand how to portray it on a vase or a teapot or something like that. I feel very honored that I get to have like little like insights into their world.
Yeah, that's so sweet. And I know artists have such an incredible, I think, gift almost of being able to translate all of those emotions and thoughts into some like a artwork that you can put at your house, or just have on you, which I think is incredible and such powerful experience, or like, artwork to have with you. And what I love most about space in general, which I'm sure you can 100% agree with, is how interdisciplinary the industry is. One thing that I love to emphasize in the interview series is how there's no traditional career path. You've mentioned previously that you were really into art and done a lot of work with art. And one thing that I really was inspired by your story was how you went like I wouldn't say untraditional, but it was more of like a very unique career path, because not a lot of people know that space art is a career path they can pursue. When I talk with kids and I'm like, oh, space art, they're like, "Oh, space art, that's so cool. I didn't know I could be a space artist." And so I think just like showing awareness of, you don't have to just be a regular policy lawyer. You could go into space policy. You can be like a food scientist for NASA. There's just so many different careers out there, and there's so many such interdisciplinary places. What I guess, like, what are your thoughts on what makes you excited and what makes you nervous for the future of the aerospace industry, kind of keeping all of this in mind?
Oh, that's a good question too. I'm excited just mostly from like all the people that I have met who work in the field. Like everyone, it just blows me away. Who's
Definitely.
working in academia or JPL or any other NASA job. Everyone who's just a lot of people I've met have been very like conscientious and empathetic and very insightful, and like a lot of the ways that we're conducting space exploration nowadays, and also giving me constant inspiration on the subject matter I want to paint. So that's been the most exciting and inspiring aspect for me. And I've also felt very welcomed by everyone in like STEM and the astro industry too. I mean, like almost even more than when I was like in art school and stuff like that. It just feels like I've, even though I am not a scientist myself and have such respect for everyone who works in those fields, because that's what gives me the ammo to, make what I make. I still feel like I have so much respect for the art that I make, even though, I'm not a scientist as well. So I guess just the interpersonal level of it has been really inspiring, and that's what I'm excited about. And then I guess the parts that I want to make sure go in the right direction, I guess, in the future, I hope that everyone is consulting historians and humanitarians and sociologists and things like that as we do plan to move off the world at any point, because I think that the last thing we want to do is repeat past mistakes on Earth in other places. And so that's another thing I kind of struggle with in my art, and hoping that I can convey a message that we want to explore outer space, and in maybe a metaphorical way more than anything else, to be open to like new worlds, new ideas, things like that, rather than just landing and conquering. I want this to be all about like just breaking into the unknown, like without fear or shame or anything like that, and in a respectful and caring manner. That's kind of where I hope things are guided towards in my art and in general space exploration.
I absolutely love that. I think space communication is so important. Like you were mentioning, a movie like the movie Moon really inspired you to get intrigued by science fiction and space. And for me, it was also the movie like The Martian, or just seeing other like Star Wars or Star Trek, or going to museums, the Air and Space Museum near my house. I think media comes in different forms, and it's so powerful to encourage and inspire young students to get involved in space, but also to the general public, like a message of why space. Because a lot lot of times people who are not in the industry just see it as like a waste of time or just something, you're wasting billions of dollars on, but really it's not. It's something a lot bigger, something very revolutionary. And space art is just a powerful form of communication to be able to spread that like message of how space is for everyone and the importance of space to our economy and to the world today that we're living in to advance, science, technology, and what we understand about our own planet. So it's really just really exciting to see how space art is starting to be so much more relevant and also so much more visible in the world we're in today.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that, yeah, those two ends, which people think are the two ends of the spectrum, can actually cross over and not be as opposite as people think. I mean, even in the processes that I do to create art, it feels a little scientific, adding and subtracting different elements together, testing, seeing how the results turn out, and making
Exactly.
your comments and notes, it's not so different from each other. So, and I'm glad that young people are learning that space art is a way you can go, and that artistic endeavors are a possibility. And like that you don't have to follow a strict career path. I know there's a lot of pressure because a lot of money goes into your education, things like that, and you want to follow that road to get to your version of success. But sometimes it's important to be like receptive to the things that are coming at you from different angles in life, and then just reacting appropriately. And you might have even better opportunities than you would have ever imagined before that.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing that I did want to echo with the point that you made earlier was that this industry is so open and so accepting. I have literally every person that I've reached out to in this industry is so willing of their time, including yourself. I just reached out to you on Twitter and you immediately responded back, which I think is like just how inclusive this community is. And I think that's one of the best things about being in the aerospace industry. And I think your story really shows that there's no one like set path to get somewhere. It's just really combining your interests and finding those opportunities and being receptive to change, which I think is so important. And now that we were able to understand a little bit more about your journey as well as what you do on your daily basis with space art, my last and final question for you is, what final piece of advice do you have for young students regarding the pursuit of a passion in STEM, aerospace, art, really just any career, something that you wish you knew when you were maybe in high school or just graduating from high school going into the real world?
Yeah, I don't have a lot I can comment on with like a STEM career necessarily. But I will say that in school, I wish I would have known that the world was bigger than college. And that if you feel like you're making something you're really passionate about, you're driving towards something that you really care about, and other people around you are not encouraging that or just not responding to it, and you feel like you have to change because of that, you might just be like in the wrong bubble, the wrong circle. I can't tell you how much I cared about like 13 people's opinion when I was in college. And I go back and I think and I laugh about that now, even though it really like caused me to not make art for like 2 years because I just didn't feel like I was like jiving with the people I was around at that time. And it made me feel like I didn't have anything to say, or I didn't like have good ideas necessarily. But it just kind of, when I got out of school and I found all these different groups of people with different ideas about what art was, and maybe that's true with science too, there's different people with different ideas about what's possible in like science fields, that you can find support in other places, and don't give up on what you want to do if you're really passionate about it. You might just need to find a new like group to help you get there.
Thank you for that advice and also for sharing that story, because I think peer pressure is a big thing in like high school, especially in college. I think a lot of times we value and weigh the opinions of others around us way more than our own feelings, which I think is true of all teenagers or even young adults. And it's something that it's important to think about, and it's important to address and almost just believe in yourself and what you
Yes.
are like worth and what you're interested in, and don't be afraid of what other people have to say. So it's very easy to say and not very easy to do. I think that's still great advice to kind of think about and to always keep in heart when you feel like your ideas are not being open or recepted by others. I think that's such important and incredible advice. And as someone who's going to college next year, I think I will definitely take this advice with me, because I know every student goes through kind of a dilemma like this at a point of their life. So really, thank you so much, Amy, for taking your time to talk with us about your work in space art, as well as sharing this wonderful advice with us. I definitely will keep it in my heart, and I'm sure everyone else who is listening will as well. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gitika. This was great. And good luck with all of your future endeavors, by the way.
Thank you.